Coming up next on Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, a festival of GPUs, what to spend your Sandybridge refund on, the amazing 6-monitor setup from Samsung, speeding up video rendering, and more. Coming up next on Twitch.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twitch.
Bandwidth for Twitch is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 117, recorded April 28, 2011. Forget the PS3, game on your PC.
This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by Netflix. Watch thousands of TV episodes and movies streamed to your PC, Mac, or TV instantly. Plus, get DVDs by mail in about 1 business day. For your free 30-day trial, go to netflix.com/twit.
Welcome to Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware. I'm Patrick Norton, joined as always by the benchmarking maven, the man, the myth himself, Ryan Shrout. Ryan, is it cold in Ohio?
No, it is not cold in Ohio. It is rainy. We've had lots of rain, lots of flooding. We haven't had a lot of that tornado issue over here. I know, seeing on like CNN stuff that across the Midwest, there's been like, 200-something deaths from tornadoes in the last week or something like that, which is a huge amount. But apparently nothing that far north to have affected us. So other than swimming to work, I'm doing okay.
Swimming can be a little bit awkward. It's okay. So everybody else, if you're not a PlayStation user, you might not know about the PlayStation Network being down. Okay, if you're not a PlayStation user and you aren't on the internet at all, yeah, you might not know about PlayStation Network's been down.
This also affects Sony televisions, though, right? Their kind of online services on the Sony TVs as well.
Oddly, I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny. It's been a really weird. You have a ton of GPU news. We were talking about like what other stories are there, and it's like okay, there was the Amazon cloud issues that happened between this week and last week. There was the PlayStation Network outage. These are mostly where the hardware software integration is so tight on this piece of hardware that the machine, while not rendered useless by the lack of the ability to log on to the PlayStation Network or Curiosity, is certainly crippled in a significant way. If you don't know why, go to penny-arcade.com and look around for the PlayStation cartoon they did the last few days. Samsung and Apple are in a battle of lawsuits over basically tablets.
Something else new, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Samsung copied Apple, even though Samsung has a product that looked like the iPhone before. It's so lawsuits are going on, strategic lawsuits on multiple continents between Samsung and Apple. And I think we should just go straight. Do you want to start with the GeForce GTX 460 or the NVIDIA Synergy or the SLI support on the AMD chipsets? I mean, what has you the most excited?
Well, what has me the most excited, there's two things that we'll talk about that kind of have me excited. And as you're talking about, it is a very GPU heavy week here. I think I had showed you this card before. This is the GTX 460 2-win, or as somebody in our commenting thread called it, the GeForce, the GTX 460 twin. As in twin, as in 2 GPUs. Maybe that's more correct than just 2-win.
Nicknamed the Charlie Sheen.
Yeah, it's the winning card. There's it's a unique graphics card. There has never been a dual GPU GTX 460 before. This card from EVGA. It doesn't exist anywhere else. This is a custom design that EVGA and NVIDIA apparently worked on together, and because of that, they got the exclusive rights to sell it. There's nothing technologically speaking that's very unique about this card. There are the exact same GTX 460 GPUs that you can buy in your standard single GPU graphics cards today. They have 1 gig frame buffer each for 2 gigs total on the card, and they are basically running SLI on a card through an Enforce 200 PCI Express bridge chip on this PCB. So when you plug it into your system and you install the driver and look at the driver, it will actually say, would you like to enable SLI? Because it basically sees it as 2 different GPUs in your system. The benefit, of course, is that they are on 1 PCB. And this kind of ties into our second story as well, because current AMD configurations, you cannot run SLI. You can do Crossfire, but you can't do SLI. That's because NVIDIA has not licensed it for use on AMD motherboards. These kinds of solutions allow you to get around that. You can run this card on any motherboard that has a PCI Express by 16 slot. Same thing with NVIDIA's GTX
really cool.
590. You can do that too.
So, I mean, has NVIDIA just been loath to license the technology to their competitor out of spite, or because they didn't think there was enough demand, or?
Both, I guess. I mean, it's fair to say that when, even today still, the AMD processor brand doesn't have a big pull in the gaming market necessarily, and that sounds kind of bad, but a lot of people are using AMD processors. A lot of the people that are considering SLI graphics configurations, NVIDIA thinks are not the same kind of target as that would want to use two graphics cards in their system at the same time. So there's probably some bit of truth to that, but people don't like not having choice. So they haven't done it both, I think, because there hasn't been enough pressure, because there hasn't been as strong a demand for AMD processors as compared to Intel processors. Basically, since the 900 series, like the Core i7 920 was the love child for the enthusiast community, right? That really set it off so that NVIDIA really didn't have any choice but to start allowing that on Intel chipsets. I guess we've kind of already transitioned. I'll come back and talk about the performance of that card, but what happened here with this announcement today is NVIDIA came out in a blog post today and said that, good news, everybody, we're going to allow SLI support on upcoming AMD chipsets, the 990FX, the 990X, and the 970 chipsets. These are the chipsets that will support the Llano processors and the Bulldozer processors coming out late. I think all of those are due out at some point in 2011. So, that NVIDIA wants to bill it as this happy-go-lucky thing. Is like, look, we're taking care of our community. They asked us to do this, so we are doing it for them. Aren't we wonderful people? The truth is that people have been asking them to do this for quite a long time, and it took them quite a long time in order to do this. And I think they're seeing that there is excitement in the channel and in the market for AMD's Llano and Bulldozer processors, and they don't want to risk any possibility that they would be left out of that boat. Right, they don't want to miss sales, because people are all of a sudden going to start buying these Bulldozer processors later in the year, but not, but then have to go with AMD graphics because they want the possibility of doing multi-GPU down the road. So it's still good news for consumers overall. This means basically you'll be able to get SLI on pretty much any platform now, whereas Crossfire is the only system that's been that flexible up to this point.
So here's the question I gotta say. The first time once I got over my obsession with the 3 fans on that GeForce GTX 2 win, can I run, if I have 2x16 slots, can I run that in can you double up a dual GPU SLI contained card like that?
So you're asking me, this shiny little PCI Express, or I'm sorry, bridge connector, SLI bridge connector, it exists on this card. It is here on this very EVGA card. The problem is, I actually wrote this review saying that, well, of course you'll be able to use it. There's an SLI bridge there. I immediately got an email from EVGA saying, actually, that's not the case. That's been disabled in the BIOS. The driver won't let you do it, and it was a mistake for that connection to be on the cards. To answer your question, no, you cannot. I mean, the reasoning is, if you look at a GTX 460 graphics card, a single GPU card, it only has one SLI connection, meaning you can only do two-way SLI with the GTX 460. So since you were already technically doing two-way SLI on the single PCB with that GPU, then they have decided that they're not going to extend it past that, which is kind of a disappointment. That feature is offered on other higher end cards, so that's kind of a letdown. No, we'll stop talking about this card, but in terms of its price and performance, it's about $70 less than the GTX 580, and it's about $50 more than the GTX 570, and its performance is much closer to the GTX 580 than to the GTX 570. And it has, because it's an SLI configuration on a card, you'll notice that there are 3 DVI outputs on it and a mini HDMI, and you can use all 4 of those at the same time. And this is one of the few NVIDIA cards that you can do NVIDIA Surround on. The GTX 590, when it came out, you can do 3 displays off that. Remember that the inherent technology of NVIDIA's GPUs still only support 2 display outputs per card. But in this case, since we have 2 GPUs on here, it can do all 4. So this card actually has, I would say, a better feature set than the GTX 580, a little bit lower performance, and it costs $70 less. So it's a pretty compelling card for that user that has like a $400 budget, doesn't really want to go up to the 480 mark, and is maybe thinking about doing multi-monitor gaming, because this will allow you to do that in a way that other higher-end NVIDIA graphics cards won't. So that's actually a plus.
Actually, it's kind of interesting because it seems like the price performance is pretty good at that stage.
It is. We've gotten comments, and this is something we mentioned in the review as well.
Right.
From a pure dollar perspective, it actually still makes sense to buy, if you have an SLI capable system, to buy a pair of GTX 460s and put them in an SLI configuration, because that will cost you about $70 less than this card. You'll get the same features and the same performance. The problem is you're taking up twice as much space in your case. You have to have extra power connectors, and your system may not, if you have an AMD, like we were talking about before, if you have an AMD rig, you can't run SLI. So there's trade-offs both ways. I was excited enough about the card to give it an award on the site, because I just think it's unique. We don't see enough of these cards that are kind of custom designs out in the market, and I like to see differentiation in the field. A whole bunch of reference cards aren't very interesting. We need to have unique things like this that push boundaries that otherwise might not have been addressed. So
hey, it's a nice hack. I support awarding originality and creativity, especially since I have a growing obsession with flight sim.
Multiple monitors is going to be good for you. Good for that, no doubt.
It's if I can figure out where to keep them in my house to keep them out of the reach of the small creature. I am not particularly excited about Blu-ray 3D decoding acceleration on AMD's Radeon HD 6770 and 6750. Not that they aren't good cards, but it's just, I don't know. I just am not excited about 3D movies for the most part. How about you?
No, not super excited about it.
I mean, it's nice that it's there. It's great for home theater buffs.
You should be less excited about the fact that the newly announced Radeon HD 6770 and 6750 are otherwise exactly identical to the currently selling Radeon HD 5770 and 5750. Like, they use the same GPU, they use the same memory, they use the same clock speeds, the same memory speeds. They are the epitome of a rebrand launch. We have a bunch of 6000 series parts now. We want to sell something at the $100 to $130 price range, and we have this great part here that we still think is fantastic in terms of performance and competition, all that kind of stuff. So now it's a 6000 series part. Ta-da!
Even though it really should have been the 5775 and the 60 or the 5755.
Yeah, so they did add support for 3D hardware decode Blu-ray 3D acceleration, which, as I think I in some kind of smart aleck way mentioned in here, that very few people are interested that have 3D TVs, and even less of those people that actually want to use the 3D in their 3D TVs. But I mean, it's okay. It's not that big a deal either way. They weren't trying to upsell it very hard. They realized it was a rebrand, and they weren't trying to definitely push it on people. Although NVIDIA was quick to say, hey, we got a lot of crap about this a long time ago for rebranding the 8800 to the 9800 to the 200 series, GTX 200 series, something like that. But they did it 3 times in succession. So this is a little bit different here. Either way, it's my tip to everybody listening to this or watching this is that if you're interested in a card in that price range, keep an eye out, go to Newegg every day or every hour, or however, ADD you happen to be, and check for sales on the 5770 and the 5750, because they're going to kind of clear those out to make room for the 6770, 6750, and you know, you'll be. My guess is you'll be able to find some 5770s for like $80 on rebates and that type of thing very soon if you can't already. So it's a good time to get a deal on a card if you're on the lookout for something in that range. So not too shabby. Again, I guess.
Again, so GeForce GTX 460, the HC 6770, 6750, NVIDIA Synergy, AMD 990 X, and 970 chipsets.
Did we mention the Synergy stuff? I mean, remember I was talking about Lucid's Virtue software? Right. And it was going to allow you to use the discrete and integrated graphics on the Sandybridge processor at the same time.
This is good. Or desirable if anybody implements it.
The software didn't work very well in Lucid's case. Right. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. And the long story short is NVIDIA is going the same thing now. They've announced, or they're going to announce, this is kind of a leak out of another website that's saying that they were going to have a piece of software called Synergy that would allow the exact same function, obviously with NVIDIA graphics cards only, but that it would allow you to, with the pending launch of the Z68 chipset from Intel that will have overclocking features and support for display output, you'll be able to use NVIDIA Synergy to run your discrete graphics and integrated graphics at the same time. Very similar limitations. You have to have your primary monitor. You have to have at least one monitor hooked up to the integrated graphics outputs on the motherboard. So if you only have one display, you're going through that. And then you'll be able to run the transcoding applications through the Intel graphics. You'll be able to run, you know, your DVD playback applications and that kind of stuff. If you've ever used a system with NVIDIA Optimus, it will, my guess is, look very, very similar, where you can right-click on an application and say, run this program on integrated graphics, discrete graphics. And you'll have that kind of granularity that you'll be able to do that, which is, in my opinion, a much better implementation than what Virtue has done. So the only question marks for me are multi-monitor gaming. I don't know how that's going to work. I would guess that like being able to do NVIDIA Surround or 3D Vision is going to be out in that equation because you're passing frame buffers already through from the discrete graphics card to the onboard system memory to be output through the integrated graphics. So once we get into 3D, you're doing double buffering, and that I'm not really sure. We haven't really tested it yet, but I'm guessing that you'll lose a couple of those features if you were interested in them. So we'll look into that and make sure when we actually do our Z68 hands-on testing and that kind of stuff. All right. Any exciting hardware news? Actually, I should ask you after. I was kind of bummed you had Alan on last week. Alan is available when I am absent. I was feeling pain and suffering once I found that out. Well, we got there. We actually started recording about an hour late because he thought I meant 9 o'clock Central instead of 9 o'clock Eastern or something like that. But yeah, we got there. And we answered a lot of, I kind of went through and stockpiled a lot of storage-related questions to kind of hit on his expertise there. But yeah, it worked out pretty well. He also recommended this little screwdriver. I just happened to bring this. I thought you might be interested in this, Patrick. You take apart a lot of small things. I do. This is a tiny electric screwdriver. You can see it has sounds like almost like a dental toothbrush, but it's a tiny electric screwdriver that has all these tiny little Torx bits, Phillips, flat type of thing, and it works pretty well if you're taking apart cell phones or tablets or laptops, especially, are one of those things where they have tiny screws. And I think it was like $25 or something like that. So obviously on Amazon, because anything you want to buy ever, you can find it on Amazon. Especially if it's like an unlabeled company or a company you've never heard of from a strange place off. It's kind of funny. I heard that noise and I was thinking about, I replaced a catalytic converter on my wife's Volvo before we split on vacation, and I was using a Dremel tool for like 3 hours. It does sound like that, yeah. It doesn't spin quite as fast as a Dremel, thank God, but yeah, well, always wear goggles when you're using Dremel cutoff blades on steel underneath the vehicle. Goggles, even I wear goggles, and I was glad I did. You know, it probably says that right on the box, Patrick. Just assuming you still have the box. But you just wear safety goggles, even if you're using the little tiny jeweler screwdrivers. We
That's funny, actually. Somebody in the Twizzler, I guess we have 3D gaming and they can work on that a bit, but it just seems that graphics haven't improved that much in the last 2 or 3 years. 2D graphics haven't improved much in the last decade, except for, doing things like moving H.264 unpacking from the CPU to the GPU. But yeah, all the interesting stuff, Twizzler, has really been happening in 3D for a very long time. I'd almost say a decade might be too long, but
he says hasn't PC gaming reached its limit as far as graphics quality? How much better can they make the same aliens look? And the answer is a lot better looking. Graphics horsepower is still increasing quite a bit. It has been, I'd say it's increased slower. I think it's more on the case of content creation being much more difficult. As you get to these extremely high detail levels, it takes an artist much longer to use all of that horsepower. That's why the benefits of tessellation are so important for future games using DirectX 11 and that kind of stuff, because tessellation is one of those ways that we can cheat and get a free improved image quality without the added expense of people time. So I still think we have a long way to go, and we'll see when you can get this kind of graphics horsepower in your phone and get 3 days battery life. Then I'll say graphics performance is at a point where I'm happy. But even then, I won't be, because there'll be something else. But
I mean, it's kind of frustrating. Consoles are it's big news from last week. Like Nintendo leaks the info about the Wii 2 and how they're going to debut that this summer, partially to distract the entire gaming community from the news that their revenues were down like 66% or something. But I bring that up because the Wii is SD. It's standard definition. The Xbox 360, the PS3 are kind of aging, is a graceful way of putting it in terms of the hardware inside of them. And I hear a lot of people arguing that the consoles are the biggest hindrance on the advancement of some PC games, because if you want to do a true multi-platform system, it's kind of frustrating to do these amazing state-of-the-art graphics for the PC and have to kind of scale everything back on the consoles. At least that's how it feels to me. It'd be interesting to talk to some of the developers about how they feel about that.
Indeed. I guess we'll go ahead and jump into some emails and Twitter questions. Before we get to that, though, we should take a moment to thank today's podcast sponsor. That would be Netflix. Netflix delivers movies directly to your home, and that saves you time, money, and hassle. Long gone are the days where any of us should have to go to a Blockbuster or a movie warehouse of your local establishment style. Not only can you get DVDs by mail in about one business day, DVDs and Blu-rays, depending on the type of plan you use, but you can also instantly watch thousands of TV episodes and movies instantly, streamed directly to your PC or Mac, or stream to your TV via a Netflix-ready device, including the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, or Nintendo Wii. As far as I can tell, you can still watch Netflix through PS3 while the PSN is down. So, good news for everybody there. You can watch as many movies as you want, anytime you want. There are never any late fees or due dates. Even if you get the DVDs by mail, you send one back, they send you the next one. It's a really, really easy system and instantly makes it even better. Now, we're always asked to pick a movie that we might recommend you watching on the Netflix instant streaming. The one I picked today happened to pop up on the homepage there, and it is a rated R film. So if you are under the age of 18, close your ear holes for the next 45 seconds or so. Full Metal Jacket came out in 1987. If you have not seen this movie, it is... I remember watching it when I was like in high school. It's one of the most confusing movies you'll ever watch, where it's both incredibly hilarious and funny, incredibly sad, incredibly like demented and tormenting, and then like the last 30 seconds of the movie, just like you end and you're just like, I have no idea what is going on with this sick twisted movie. It's Stanley Kubrick, so you kind of expect a lot of that stuff in there. It has a lot of names, probably a lot of people in it that maybe not names. Adam Baldwin is probably a name. Matthew Modine,
Arlie Ermey.
Yep. It's got a lot of classic people. Who was the drill sergeant? Was that
Arlie Ermey?
Okay, I was gonna say he has made a living off of that character since this movie has come out. So, as I said, R-rated, 17 plus, I guess, in the United States is the rule there. Instant streaming, you can watch this tonight. All you have to do is go and sign up for your free Netflix account. Let's see, the URL for that, of course, is netflix.com/twit. Instantly watch that movie or thousands of other TV episodes or other movies when you register for the free trial membership, netflix.com/twit. And we thank Netflix for their support of This Week in Computer Hardware.
Thank you, Netflix. Oh, boy. Who's up for a GPU budget question?
Who is not up for a GPU budget question? We should point out, of course, the email address, twitch@twit.tv. And then follow Patrick and I on Twitter as well. I always kind of, usually the day of the show recording on Thursdays, solicit to the crowds, to the masses for questions. At Patrick Norton and at Ryan Shrout are the incredibly clever Twitter names to follow there. So... But yeah, so let's jump into those emails
on that one. So Anthony says Anthony's feeling gaming pain. But he says he's got a twist. He doesn't think he's the only one who's asking for a GPU recommendation. But here's his twist. He wants to play Portal 2, which is just released. He knows his current system will not play Portal 2 because his current system can barely play Portal 1, even with all the video settings set to the minimum. Whenever I'm looking through a portal and during the whole final battle, I get audio clipping and a noticeable drop in frame rates. I would say this is not unexpected on a system with integrated graphics, especially if it's 3 or 4 years old. To upgrade, I definitely need to build a new system. All the parts could use a boost. The best CPU I have around me is a couple of years old at best. Okay. Here's the twist. I don't need a specific graphics card recommendation, more of a price point plan to base my new system on. I'm thinking the mid-range to high-range system on the PC Per leaderboard would probably make a good starting point. If you're not familiar with the PC Per leaderboard, pcper.com/leaderboard is a excellent collection of parts lists, basically recommendations on the parts you need to build a solid system, anywhere from sub $500 up to, oh my goodness, you have a Platinum American Express card. So Anthony is thinking, I should probably plan on about $200 for a GPU that will play Portal 2 without problems, and lower graphics games for the next couple of years. He's been building up a collection of games on Steam, some of which I don't have the processing power to play yet, so anything that could handle Portal 2 will most likely be able to handle my existing but unplayed collection. Any thoughts to add? Yeah, actually. The best thing about buying a $500 to $1,000 CPU every 3 or 4 years is by the time you upgrade, the performance difference is going to be vast and mind-altering and delightful and happy-making, and you won't be like, I spent how much for an incremental improvement in performance? You'll have a radical change in how fast your computer does everything. Mm-hmm. Something we've said before, Ryan and I both, don't buy parts onesie-twosie. Save your money, then buy all of the parts at once to buy your game. Onesie-twosie over 2 weeks is fine, but people are like, well, I want to buy a CPU now, and next month I'm going to buy a motherboard. The month after that I'll buy memory, and the month after that I'll buy a GPU, at which point there'll either be a new GPU or a new motherboard or a new CPU, or the prices will have dropped like 25%, and you'll be like, man, if I waited 4 months, I could have gotten the motherboard and the memory for the money I saved on the, it just... Save money, then buy parts when you're ready to actually build the system, because you will always spend less money for the same part or get more performance for the same amount of money if you wait, especially if you're talking about months.
A bad car analogy would be, would you make car payments on a 36-year loan and then take the car at the end of the loan? Just making payments in, and maybe they give you the steering wheel and then a wheel or something like that, and a tire. You don't want to do that. You save it all up, then buy. You get the best you can at that instant. So
here's a question for you, Ryan. The low-end system leaderboard, $443, AMD Athlon 2 X4 645, and a Sapphire 1028 7L, which is an HD 5670. Those are probably a little lower than you would want performance-wise to run Portal 2.
It should those should still play it, but Portal 2 in terms of new games is likely to be the least demanding of any modern game out there.
Right.
And it still looks really good, and it's definitely more stressful than Portal 1. Not a whole lot, but it's definitely more stressful than Portal 1. I would say Yes, these specs are probably a little less than would be desired if you wanted to have the system extend out 2-3 years type of build to get a system up and running that will play games of today. The mid-range board is a significant jump up. You might take a look at just the GPU in there, where we talk about a 6950 for $210. Actually, if you take that low-end budget build that's $450 or less currently priced, and you replace that 5670, say, with a GTX 560 that might cost $150 instead of $75, then I think you have a system that could handle Portal 2 without any issues, and even be able to play, say, Battlefield 3 when it comes out, I think, later this year. Not at max settings. Don't expect that kind of stuff for a budget system, but you'll be able to play it, and it will run well, and you won't have sound stuttering issues like you in Portal 1 for sure.
That would be bad. That would be very bad. Is the Radeon HD 6950, that's still pretty much the sweet spot for you in that $250 range?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely. It's probably the best card in that price range. You go a little bit below that, we're going to change our mind. You go a little bit above that, we'll change our mind. But the $200 point, that's really, really good pick. All right.
Any other thoughts? 2 gigabytes or 4 gigabytes of memory for anybody trying to save money?
You've always got to get 4 gigabytes. I mean, memory's so cheap. You're practically not even saving money. If you're saving $20, you're costing yourself $50 in headache. So go ahead and get 4 gigs of memory. I mean, I was looking at memory earlier today, and I just was like, okay, we bought 24 gigs for the editing rig. That's obviously more than a bit extreme, but it's, the fact that I could get that much memory for under $400 was mind-blowing. So
shocking.
Do that. We've got an email here from Scott about a motherboard replacement plan. It says he enjoys the podcast every weekend when I finally have time to listen. Unlike Jack and show 115, I decided to return my B2 motherboard. Now with my refund money in hand, I am looking for a new Sandybridge board to make a home for my 2600K. I'm getting confused on my choices. Do I stick with a P67 or spend more to get one with an Enforce 200 to have more PCI Express by 16 slots for SLI? In parentheses, he says, I really don't understand why Sandybridge has so few PCIe lanes. Yeah, that's one of those issues. Price for the NF200 enabled boards are very expensive, and they include many other special features. Is there a cheaper Enforce 200 motherboard coming out soon geared to those who want multi-GPUs but are not overclocking obsessed? Or do the P67 motherboards have enough oomph with the 2 by 8 lane PCI Express slots pretending to be by 16? And PS, why do we have 1155 and 1156 pin sockets other than to create confusion? Both notable questions. I'll answer the last one first. The reason is the 1156 processors, Linfield, Clarkdale, and the 1155 processors, Sandybridge, are different electrically. So they needed to key them in a way that you couldn't accidentally stick the wrong one in the wrong motherboard. And the 1155 versus 1156 is just one of the ways they do that. They didn't want to have 1156 Sandybridge and 1156 Linfield, or 1156 Sandybridge and 1156 Linfield. So they just kind of alter it by one pin. That helps with, it's supposed to help reduce confusion, although obviously in most people's case, as we've talked about many times with Intel, branding, naming schemes, those types of things, they are not the best at altering confusion. They create a lot of it.
Just because it makes for more interesting activity in the marketplace.
Yep.
Yeah, it was actually fun. We got a, oops, sorry.
I was going to say, as far as the motherboards, Z68 motherboards are really close. If you haven't bought one already and you're listening to this now, I would wait. But to answer your question about the Enforce 200 part, if you're just going to use 2 GPUs, by 8 lanes is plenty of bandwidth for 2 graphics cards. Even if you've got 2 GTX 580s or something like that, the 2 by 8 slots on any SLI capable P67 or Z68 motherboard is going to be perfectly fine for multi-GPU gaming. And you can get those cheap, because I know he's talked about these Enforce 200 boards are the ones that are $300 to $400 for a P67 board. That's an awful lot of money to ask for a motherboard. So I would wait for Z68 1, and when those come out, you're perfectly fine going with 2x8 lanes collections there for your SLI. So
it's funny. Web 4765 on the boards is like 3 gigabytes is the max my PC has ever tried to use, and it's like time to go 64, man. That's all I'm saying. 64-bit OS. The Dave Voiles says, I respect your opinions. Excuse me. Should we do the Corey? I'm sorry, I skipped over Corey Bruce's question. Corey Bruce asks, do the working directories have to be on the C partition of the SSD to maximize speed? I have all my programs on the SSD and all working directories on the 7200 RPM D drive. Will video encoding be faster using the SSD as working directories? My minimal testing got almost the same frame per second regardless of where the working directories were. Is this correct? So by working directories, I'm assuming you're talking about where the physical data a program is manipulating is stored. The video you're editing in, I want to say iMovie or Final Cut Pro, which is a sign that I've been working in this office for a while. You know, the video you're editing or your Photoshop photo that you're editing, you know, space is limited on an SSD, so you're probably thinking, gosh, I can't fit everything on that drive, and you probably can't. The short answer is, like, Corey, Bruce, you've already answered your own question. You've done the best possible thing you can do in any situation when you're testing hardware. You've taken a real-world situation, your video encoding. You've tested it in both possibilities, the directory on the SSD with the application and the directory on the slower 7200 RPM hard drive with the, you know, basically on the slower hard drive, and you found a minimal difference in the performance. You've answered your question. You're good to go. You know, if you were opening those files and closing those files repeatedly, or you're doing a lot of batch processing, then the SSD would probably be faster. The SSD only helps when you're moving data, when you're opening files, when you're launching applications, when you're launching your operating system. Once the file is out of main, or once the file is off the drive and into main system memory, the SSD doesn't help. And I suspect the bottleneck on the encoding is your CPU, or the combination of your CPU and GPU you use for encoding, because the process of encoding is incredibly taxing and probably happens, and I'm going to probably get in trouble for saying this, but I'm thinking the bottleneck is more the actual time it takes to encode that video rather than the time it takes to move the video on and off of the drive. So.
Yeah, I mean, unless it'd have to be really extreme, you'd have to be working from some really massive source video for it not to be able to load up the source video. I mean, even if you're working like Adobe Premiere, if the source is on a spinning drive, it has to bring it into memory before it can do the encoding work and then write out the new file. You'd have to be working with or writing to some really serious image quality settings and really huge files for that to be a bottleneck. I think you're right. I think it's more of a CPU bottleneck. As a perfect example, we went from, I keep talking about this new rig we built for our video editing machine. We went from 2 quad-core Core 2 or Core Duo or Core Quad processors and 12 gigs of memory to a dual 6-core hyper-threaded processor Xeon system with 24 gigs of memory, and we saw our rendering times cut by more than half on HD video. And we are using basically SSDs as the same source each way. So this is all CPU improvements being seen there. And I would wager the only time you'll see storage improving your video editing is, again, if you're using really high quality files and you're doing like scrubbing back and forth, like during that editing process, when you actually hit the encode button, it loads everything into memory and then writes out. So I think you're dead on there that it's more CPU than storage based there, and not very many people can answer their own questions in the question.
It's always a plus. Yep. This is awesome. This is the Samsung MD23OX6, and Dave Voiles says, I respect your opinions. What do you think of 6 monitor setups? And if you go to this link that Dave Voiles sent into us, it is basically a pre-built 6 monitor array. So there's 2 monitors, 2 monitors, and 2 monitors for a mere $3,600. And if Digital Kitty was here, she would go, "Oh my God, I could, build you 6 24-inch monitors."
Yeah.
Which she has, like, I think at least 3 and probably by now 6 30-inch monitors in her office of doom. My first thought is like, hey, if your client's got the money and you don't feel like configuring this yourself, this looks fantastic. And then part of me goes, 23-inch monitors sell for like $200 a pop, so that's 200 times 6, that's $1,200. So you're paying like another $2,400 for the really cool frame and integration and box and shipping.
Now,
that bothers me.
There's a couple of other things I'll point out. These are, I think these are the PVA monitors. Right. So they're really, really good quality displays.
Okay.
Also, I don't know of any other way to buy these particular displays. These are the Samsung thin bezel monitors that I think only exist in this form factor. If you look at the pictures on them, you'll see that the bezels are incredibly thin compared to what we're used to. These are the ones that it's been more than a year now. AMD first demoed iFinity configurations on, and they're like, "Oh, you'll be able to buy these," and like they're just now kind of starting to show up for sale, and unfortunately for $3,600.
But you get 6 of them.
Yeah, later in this Twitter conversation I had with Dave Voyle, it came out that his client had already purchased this configuration, so that's good. I guess you get to see it in person. Let me know how awesome it is. But then you need to have a system that can power 6 displays. So you got to have 2, 3 output AMD cards, or one of the Radeon 5870 Ifinity Edition graphics cards that can do 6 individually. So
the thing that struck me was partially like, is your client doing this because they want to have the coolest set of monitors on the block? I mean, because that was one of the funny things about seeing Digital Kitty's setup, where she had like stripped the cases off these monitors and built this really sophisticated armature to hold them up. I mean, the people I see who actually use multiple monitors set up are basically, they kind of fall into 2 camps. They are gamers, especially flight sim users, and they are financial traders who are trying to watch 32 sets of graphs so they can do arbitrage and currency trading or stock trades. Where you see like the classic movie, something's going on Wall Street, and there's some guy in a little tiny veal fattening pen just wider than his or her shoulders, and she's got the phone in one ear and 6 monitors and a keyboard. So part of me is like, I'm curious what your client's doing. Because it's $3,600. That's more than I paid for the last 2 cars I bought. Together, actually, they would just edge out $3,600. But they're cool. I don't know.
They are without a doubt that.
They are cool. Samsung makes really nice glass. They make really nice monitors. As Ryan pointed out, these are the really cool ones with the thin bezels. Although part of me is like, what your client really needs is 6 D8000 46-inch flat panels that have the even thinner bezel arrayed in like wow, that would be huge, dude. That would be that would be like having a projector in front of the desk. Maybe your client needs one of the new short throw projectors. Optoma's coming out with new short throw projectors above the desk. In any case, they're cool. They're expensive. I think your client, actually, I want to know if your client's happy with them. Email us, twitch@twit.tv.
Send us pictures of the setup. Somebody standing in front of it. I want to see that stuff too. Let's see. We've got an email from Sean about micro ATX motherboards. He says, "I got a motherboard question for you. Love taking my gaming machine to my friend's house to show off my custom liquid cooling loops and the power that it allows me to wield. However, as with most gaming PCs, it is beyond huge. I'm considering upgrading my Phenom 2 955 to one of the AMD Bulldozer parts when they come out, hopefully this summer, which will allow me to upgrade my motherboard at the same time. I'm just wondering, if I decide to go for a micro ATX board instead of my usual full ATX, will I be giving up anything other than the sheer number of ports? I would love to build a custom case that will provide just enough room for my liquid cooling and allow me to transport it more easily. I'm most concerned about heat dissipation from the board and, of course, the overall speed of the system." The answer is, you don't give up anything that you don't see missing on the spec sheet, right? the chipsets in these micro ATX boards are more than likely going to be very similar. I think, P67 boards are used in Sandybridge platforms. Those are full-size ATX. I don't think I've seen any micro ATX of that. And then H67 is the chipset that is kind of fits the micro ATX form factor. The difference between those two chipsets currently is that the H67 allowed for integrated display output, but no overclocking, while the P67 was the exact opposite, had overclocking features in that. Obviously, if you're doing custom water cooling and talking about the power that allows you to build, you probably want to do overclocking. My guess is with the Z68 launch coming up, wait, no, I'm sorry, we're talking about AMD Bulldozer parts here. In that case, the 990FX and the 990X chipsets that will be out very soon, it is very likely, and in fact, I would bet on it, that there will be lots of micro ATX motherboards that come out with full overclocking support and features. And the only thing you'll lose is you won't be able to do SLI or multi-GPU graphics. You'll have to be limited to one discrete graphics card. There might be less room on the PCB for some of those extra features you're talking about. But if you're okay with, the included 4, or I think they have 6 SATA 6 ports on those motherboards, and one graphics card and 4 memory slots, I don't see any problem with moving to an MATX platform at all.
Not at all. No,
and I think it'd be a cool project to build, a case around that. And if you do so, send us pictures, let us know how it goes. We'd love to be able to share that type of stuff with the rest of the audience and see how your design process was going and what you thought about the differences of it. I don't think you're giving up anything, except for if you want the potential to do multi GPUs. I think that's the one thing you're giving up.
Can't argue. I like small motherboards. It's been really funny watching Robert Heron's built a couple home theater systems, and he's now obsessed with like the mini and the micro ATX boards. Which is actually how I ended up with my last motherboard, because he bought the wrong size. So I have a new board to build the system around. David's got a question about a tablet config. Says, are there going to be AMD Fusion chips in convertible PC tablets? Historically, most of those have used Intel chips. Actually, historically, most tablets have used ARM chips. Because Apple's A4 and A5 are customized versions of the ARM processor designed to run a little bit faster than the ARM processor. Although, convertible PC tablets, most of them I think actually, are probably running Intel Atom. I would hope the Fusion. Is the new Dell one, is that running an Atom or an AMD processor?
I have no idea. I don't know.
I'm going to Dell.com. Okay. I would assume somebody's got to be using the...
I don't know of anybody yet, but it makes a lot of sense. So I assume by convertible tablet, he means one that's a laptop that you then twist the screen on. Yeah. No, he says tablet and not... Yeah, I guess just twist the screen on.
Convertible suggests it's to me at least, I think that suggests it's the combo.
There's no reason why they can't do that. There's no processing, there's no platform limitations or anything like that. And I think what's really going to come down to is who, Lenovo makes the most popular ones with the X201 and that type of thing. It's just a matter of integration. I think we'll need to see the AMD Fusion chips accepted, make sure they have a good groundwork, that they're going to be around for a while, because a convertible tablet takes a lot more design time and customized design time than, say, slapping together a new Asus or MSI or Lenovo notebook, swapping out a board and done, you're good. When you're building something like that, you want to be very specific about the hardware that's inside of it. So I expect that we will see something like that. But Intel has a huge market share domination, right? So it's kind of like law of percentages. Eventually we'll see one, and however successful it is, or they tend to be, will be how many more we see in the future. Did you find that Dell machine, or?
Yeah, the Dell Inspiron Duo, a.k.a. the new convertible, starts at $550. It's kind of funny. I was talking with Jason Cross from PC World. He was over on Texilla this week doing notebook picks. Yeah, Atom dual-core N550. For some reason, I could have sworn that had a I could have sworn that had
or something.
Yeah. I don't know why. I thought it actually had a AMD CPU. But it's a pretty interesting design, because unlike the tablets where you've got like the the convertible notebook tablets where the monitor flips up and then you spin it and then you rotate it back down. This one actually it kind of looks like a children's toy because the monitor is inside a big frame that runs around it, and you physically flip it around.
Okay.
So that actually, they've shown that off originally.
Is that the one where you can remove it from the keyboard, or is that's a different product,
this one is definitely not removable from the keyboard. Okay. Actually, I just dropped the link into the show notes. I don't know if John can pull it up on the TriCaster. But part of me is really curious about how that's going to hold up long term, because notebooks, the part that usually dies on a notebook, at least for me, if you don't kill the monitor, is the cabling inside the joint, because there's this incredibly small ribbon cable and this incredibly small connector that holds it together. So I wonder what they've done on this tablet, where they've, see if I can actually, what they've done on this tablet, because you can just see how it's designed to literally flip inside the frame right there. And I'm just looking at that and thinking, like, how is that joint going to hold up long term?
Did that make the bezel very large then? I mean, it seemed like it would have to be a thicker, stronger bezel to kind of support that weight shifting.
I would think so. I mean, you're talking about where is it here? I'm going to try not to make anybody too seasick on here. It's a 10.1 inch display.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, so that's not tiny, right? I mean, it's pretty good size, but okay. My guess is then it would have the bezel more of a 12-inch screen then type of thing as well.
I would think so. I would.
Let's see. We've got another email from Ray about video editing upgrade. It says he's doing HD video editing for my friend's band, nothing professional, with Premiere CS5. I've got an AMD Phenom 2 X2 Windows 7 64-bit with 4 gigs of RAM, a terabyte, 6 gig SATA as a primary drive, 2 gig. I assume he means 2 terabyte SATA 2 as my secondary drive, and an SSD for the OS. He's looking to invest not a whole lot of cash in an upgrade to make the video rendering quicker. It's currently about 12 minutes of rendering for every 1 minute of video, depending on the output settings, of course. I'm thinking that a CUDA-based video card will probably give me the best decrease in rendering times. There's just too many. There's just way too many for a mere tech mortal like myself to pick, though. I'm driving a pair of 22-inch DVI monitors and really don't do any serious gaming. Additionally, how much performance increase would, say, extra RAM or a faster, more core CPU do instead of the GPU? It's an interesting question. My first thought was, having, again, just built this video rig, and we actually have CS5 on it too, Adobe CS5.
Right.
We still haven't figured out how to enable GPU encoding on it. There used to be a software plugin from Elemental Technologies that did it, and now I think that company only does like online distributed type rendering applications. I'm not really sure. And I looked up Main Concept. They do GPU accelerated encoding and transcoding through Adobe CS5. But anytime a piece of software says call for prices, I tend to not want to call for prices, because usually means it's going to be really, really expensive to do so. And so I went back and looked at the question again, and I think your bottleneck here, pal, is going to be your Phenom 2 X2 processor.
Right. It was kind of funny because, CUDA support has been CUDA has been much better, more popular. English is kind of like my first language. Technically, it's my only language, but it's like the Mercury engine inside of Adobe Premiere CS5. And last time I checked, there were only a very small number of certified cards that they wanted the Mercury engine to run on. And please correct me if I've got this backwards in my head, because again, I spend a lot more time in Final Cut these days than Adobe Premiere. Not because Adobe Premiere isn't an amazing editing tool, but it's
you are correct. It's limited. Although if you look in certain places, there are apparently simple text files you can edit that it will accept much more.
Oh, cool.
Many more cards. Obviously not officially supported, but yeah. And Quadro cards are expensive, and that's, if you want to stay official and all that kind of stuff, I mean, the cheapest Quadro card you can probably buy that's going to actually accelerate things is probably going to be in the $500 to $600 range.
Right.
Anyway, so
frustrating.
I would say your dual core. He didn't really say what speed, I don't think, but Dual-core processors are a little bit dated. The Phenom 2, it's still a good processor if you're doing basically anything else. You have picked the one computing task you can do that will gobble up every bit of CPU power you possibly can. We've got 24 threads or whatever running in there, and when we do a video decode or encode, it's using 95% of the processing power available, in the machine. So it will use everything. If you get these well-threaded applications, it will use everything. Yeah. Maybe memory too. I mean, the faster you can load stuff up. I don't. It really depends on what your exact workloads are. But
it's video rendering and editing is the one place where it starts getting difficult. Spend to the max of your hardware budget and spend it really carefully. I just posted a link actually. There's a pretty amazing guide on Studio One Productions. They did an article on Premiere CS5. They've got the information on unlocking CS5 to use other cards. Definitely take a look at some of the benchmarks out there. And yeah, you can get a faster CPU, then a faster GPU, and then more memory, and then you get a SATA, an SSD drive, and then you think, now I need an even faster GPU, and then you get a faster CPU to go with that. Bill,
one last point though. The only other good thing is since he's got an AMD Phenom 2 processor, I'm guessing his motherboard will support the Phenom X6 processors. I'm guessing. So you can move from a dual core to a 6-core processor. In theory, check your motherboard BIOS. Check for the latest BIOS on the motherboard vendor site and look for that CPU support list. You could go from a 2-core to a 6-core system, just by swapping out the processor, not having to worry about motherboards or anything else. It's probably your easiest, quickest bet to improve that time. Sorry. Yeah. Anyway, back to our email.
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, that article actually on Studio One, actually they did rendering comparisons based on it. It's basically the more CPU cores you have, the better your performance will be. Having a video card with 96 CUDA cores and DDR5 memory was more than sufficient, gave us very close performance as higher end video cards with more CUDA cores and a wider memory bandwidth.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's wow. Yeah, you can spend a lot of time reading this stuff.
Indeed.
Yeah, let's move on to the final question because I'm about to go into feral nerd benchmark examination, and that it doesn't really make for good television or podcasting. Nice. Bill's looking for a free NAS option. He says, I was listening to your last podcast and heard your bet on using a Drobo box as a SAN for video editing. Depends on which Drobo box. I had a quick suggestion for a viable alternative. It's one thing for archival. It doesn't work very well as a scratch disk for the system. Very few NAS boxes actually will do that well. Says I had a quick suggestion for a viable alternative that I use as a file server where I work as well as at home. FreeNAS, which rocks. I love FreeNAS. It's a BSD-based open source project. You can literally build a server to specs and install on. I won't go into the nitty-gritty of the software, but needless to say, it has a myriad of features. What I find most valuable is the ability of an operating system to spin down your drives when they're not in use. They power off after a certain amount of idle time, which you can manage and then power back up when called upon, or a sleep schedule can be set for, say, business hours. As you can imagine, this helps a lot with drive longevity. Also, there are on-the-fly smart monitoring abilities inside the software, and well, I could keep going on, but I don't want to turn on this into a couple-page letter. I'd highly recommend that anyone looking at setting up a file server or SAN take a look at this as a solution. Who can argue with free, right?
Absolutely.
I've had people who had issues about spinning down hard drives on NAS devices now that impacted other operating systems working with them. I will say I'm actually waiting for the new version of FreeNAS to finish getting built because where did it go? Because I was talking to the guys from IX Systems because we just bought a massive box from them, and I'd met some of those guys in a previous life. They were working on release candidate 3 for the new version of that, basically because they're doing a full version of ZFS implementation, like the Open Solaris ZFS, that allows for some really amazing management of your drives. So I'm actually working on building a system around that for a Techzilla episode. I love FreeNAS. We've built FreeNAS boxes in the past. They're pretty cool. ZFS is actually incredibly cool. It's just the file system and volume manager is pretty sophisticated. But yeah, FreeNAS is amazing. If you want to know where to find it, freenas.org is the right website for that. In fact, Let me look at it right now. Have they released the latest version?
I've never actually used it hands-on with it, but so many people have talked about it and kind of recommended it that I think I need to do that. I think I have some extra computer parts laying around here where I could build one. So
you could build probably like 7 or 8.
My problem is all the cases I have are like these enormous gaming cases. So a FreeNAS and say a Silverstone Raven 2 chassis is a little bit of overkill.
No, the best part is you can put that in the closet with like a 24-inch monitor to watch the command line with. Yeah. And somebody's going to be putting a code away and be like, "What's this?" And you can tell them that's my
really impress them.
NAS, yeah, or scare them. If you've got a question or a suggestion or an idea or a project you want us to comment on or help out with, do us a favor, email us twitch@twit.tv, or you can hit us on the Twitters at Ryan Shrout or at Patrick Norton. I gotta say, what's coming up on PC Per this week? Are you getting some relief from the rush of GPU mayhem?
I would like to believe that. I don't think it's going to be the case. We will definitely have some graphics card stuff. We always do. I know we are finishing up on one of our first reviews of a dual-core Sandybridge notebook. So those are finally coming of age, so to speak. We've got a lot of other good things coming up. Still, the 3D article that we had hoped to have up, I think last week even, a lot of other stuff has kind of come up from the AMD NVIDIA combatant side of things, so we're still working on that as well. And of course, we launched the new website. We have the whole new design up there at pcper.com, and we are still doing daily contests and giveaways. If you go to the website every day, I think right now we have an OCZ 120 gig SSD giveaway running that will end probably as soon as the show is done recording. So by the time you listen to this, if you've downloaded it, something else will be giving away. We've given away like a $350 motherboard, and we've got really high-end Corsair speakers, and headphones have gone, and all kinds of stuff. So just check out the new site. We're looking for opinions and feedback on that. And what about on Techzilla? I know you talked about building that NAS project for that, but other stuff on the horizon as well?
Well, we just actually did a segment I had a lot of fun with. Somebody is tired of traveling with all the wall warts. For all their devices use USB charging, like micro USBs for charging, or like the iPad 2, they go from a USB to a dock connector, and they were looking for a single device to charge all of their USB devices, including that miserable 2 amp over USB charge for the iPad and iPad 2. We got an answer for that. We got a bunch of free games. Anthony Carboni from Bytejacker came on and found some really slick, independently produced games that are free and pretty amazing. Jason Cross, I mentioned, is coming on with a notebook buyer's guide. So if you're thinking about buying a new notebook, he's got some recommendations. And Robert Heron has one of Panasonic's new HD TVs, which has beautiful colors, awesome black levels once you calibrate it. Some really amazing looking black levels. It's a 50-inch flat panel for under $1,400, and actually its MSRP is $1,350, which means it should be under $1,300 when you're buying it. So that's what's coming up on Techzilla in the next couple days.
Very cool.
Yeah, I like the idea of an inexpensive, beautiful 50-inch flat panel. For me, a 50-inch flat panel for under $1,300 is a pretty incredible deal, especially because it doesn't look like ass, and it includes Wi-Fi dongles, so you can use it with built-in Netflix and everything else. I'm just amazed at how fast HDTV prices are dropping.
Yep.
And Blu-rays are cheap, and Netflix is everywhere. So
yeah, somebody that works in the office with me had a panel go out, and the Samsung repair was quoted at $700 and something. I said, no, you can buy a new plasma 50-inch TV for $700 now. So, oh well.
It is super cheap. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this episode of Twitch. I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Ryan Shrout.
We'll see you next week on Twitch.